Hi, good evening. Hi, I'm Ben, and welcome. Right now, I see Alona. Hi, Alona. I'm Ben. Um, Welcome. We're glad you're here. And as of right now, you're the one participant who's actually signed on to this event, who's not one of the presenters or a
Oh,
member of
that's
the
so
Federation
funny.
staff.
Okay.
Where are you from, Alona?
I'm from Sparta, New Jersey,
Mm-hmm.
which is in Sussex County. And I'm part of B'nai Shalom of Sussex County.
Mm-hmm.
We have locations in Franklin and in Newton. And so I thought this would be interesting
Yeah.
to
Well,
listen to.
thanks for
So I'm sorry, I'm in my kitchen. I thought it was
I'm in my
like
dining room.
like a webinar.
So, so that's how it is. That's how that's how it goes these days. So before look, we're gonna wait another minute or two to see if other folks come in, but we've done about a dozen of these sessions already, and actually have recordings of them available to you. So we're here. We're happy to walk you through some of the data if you wanted to, but we also wanted to let you know that since it's just you and it's not going to end up being like a larger presentation, at this moment it looks like it's just you, a larger presentation. We can also send you the links to all the other recordings and let you do it on your own time.
I mean, I did log into the first one that was a more broad conversation.
Oh, you did?
So
yeah.
as part of that, I found that very, very interesting. I was looking to see if you had other information as it pertains to the outlying areas.
Yeah.
We're in the process of working with Max Kleinman with the Jewish Legacy Project and putting together a survey to try to go out to not just our membership, but like anyone on our old mailing list to try to figure out what people are looking for and what keeps people and what would draw people in. And,
so maybe what we could do is, since you were on one of the other sessions, Janet, I'm thinking that what we could do is we're going to wait another minute or two to see if anyone else logs in, but maybe we could skip the introductory parts of your presentation and go to the regional differences and focus on some of the data around the western part of Metro West, so Alona can get that picture. And since Alona, it looks like it, even if there's somebody else who logs in, it's only going to be a couple people. If you want to just, have a conversation, ask Janet questions along the way. I can speak on Janet's behalf because we've been, doing these presentations together. She's happy to, really just talk things through. It's 7:35. Maybe we'll just, now it's 7:36. So maybe Janet, maybe we can just do that. Let's share the screen and go looking at skipping. And Alona, you heard if you were at one of the previous presentations, I'm Ben. I'm the Chief Planning Officer at Federation, and Janet Aronson is the lead researcher from the Cohen Center for Modern Jewish Studies at Brandeis. And she led the team who collected this data and did the analysis and has all the answers.
I hope. Yeah, so if you heard the beginning is sort of an overview. So I'm just going to skip to the map and the regions, and then I'm happy to talk to you about some of your specific questions regarding how to get most interesting conversation, how to get people to participate. So here is the map, and I think you probably saw this already, the map of the 4 regions. And so what I want to point out that's good for you to be aware of is why we divided them the way we did. We need to have enough respondents in any group in order to be able to tell you anything about the region. So then enough actual survey respondents. So there weren't enough just in Sussex. So we borrowed, and we wanted them to be contiguous. So we kind of borrowed some of Morris and this part of Somerset and put them together into this large region. And I think it's obviously not surprising to you that it's a very low density Jewish region. I also mentioned on my talk to the Eastern Morris, that I actually know this area pretty well. My parents used to live in Rockaway. So it was interesting to have this conversation about where is that line. And I said, oh, I know exactly where that line is. And so I know there's a sort of also a real qualitative difference, I think, between Jewish life in this eastern part of the county, closer to Essex, and then this western part. So it did sort of make sense. This just shows the distribution, and you can see that the largest share are in Essex. That's 38% of households. And it's about the same whether you look at households or people. About a quarter are in East Morris. And one thing to keep in mind is that Union and this Western Greater Metro West are about the same size as in terms of the number of Jewish people, number of Jewish household, number of Jewish people, but it's just, distributed over a much broader area. You can unmute, Alona, if you want, so that if you have questions, just speak up.
Okay.
Make it a conversation. So just the numbers, which pretty much tell the same story, and the percentages. So this is all in the report, and you could go into detail. One of the things that does stand out is that this is the percent of the household. This is the density, the percent of all households in the region who are Jewish, and the percent of all people who are Jewish. It's actually a little surprising that the density in Western Greater Metro West is actually the same as in Essex. Union has the same number of people, but it has many more non-Jewish people. So it's just more populated. Essex, of course, includes Newark. So if you were to exclude Newark, it would be more dense. But so it is similar that just as a share of the number of households, it's still a relatively high number of Jewish people. This is the age breakdown. Here's one place that I'm going to call it West stands out, that the West and Union have a relatively larger share of young people. Now, I'm going to guess, but you may know better, that that a lot of these are young people living with they're 18 to 34-year-olds, they're young adults. Now, this could include college students that parents consider to be part of their household, and could include young adults who are living with their parents. Maybe that was higher because of COVID, but it does have a smaller, larger young population. But still, the largest single group is 50 to 64, which is the largest group of the whole population. In terms of household composition, about a quarter of households have minor children under age 18, and that's the same as in Union. In terms of finances, I mean, this is noteworthy. I think that we asked about people to describe their standard of living, and they said they could describe themselves as either not enough money or just enough, just enough.
Right.
Those groups together are what we call struggling, and 20% of households in Western Metro West describe themselves as struggling.
Right.
So that's,
Interesting.
Yeah, similar to some of the other regions. Jewish engagement, it's pretty typical that—
Janet, maybe
Yes.
since we didn't do the intro tonight, you just want to say a word about the index of Jewish engagement before you go through this stat.
Sure. Let me just scroll back. So I'll just talk about it. So the index of Jewish engagement is a typology that we've developed. It takes like 18 or 20 Jewish behaviors, and you put them together in a statistical analysis to get the patterns of Jewish behavior. Like, so rather than just saying, X% of people are members of synagogues, it looks at lots of behaviors: members of synagogues, members of Jewish organization, donating, marking Shabbat, all sorts of ritual behavior, community behavior, and also personal behavior. So that's really important in this case. Personal behavior is things that people do on their own. So it could be read Jewish books, watch Jewish films, talk about Jewish topics with their friends. And then we classify the community into 5 groups based on what is their most a sort of dominant type of behavior. And what's really important here is this large group, this 42% of Jews who are in this group we call the personal group. That means that most of their Jewish behavior is at home, is with their friends, it's online, and it's not with organizations. So I would say when you think about how to, target your community, these are people who are interested in Jewish life, but they're not getting it through organizations.
That's right. I would agree. It's amazing though, that number relative to the other locations. But I would say we would see that, and I would say that may not be a new phenomenon for out here, which is interesting. I think that it's always been, I feel like if you're living out west, you've made a decision that you're going to search for Judaism sort of like in your own way a bit.
Yes.
And instead of it being sort of part of the norm, as if you lived in a Livingston,
Right.
And you had, very large synagogues, and that was part of your day-to-day life. So that number is very interesting. It's interesting, like when you think about trends in synagogues, and you think about our synagogue, and if you were to go back 50 years, or there's always been a notion of it sort of existing in its own way. And people making the best of the situation and seeking things out a little bit differently. But that number is really interesting.
Yeah, I think it really jumps out.
Yeah.
And I think this, we don't know how much this was affected during with COVID, with people being able to do things online. But even then, these are not people who go to services online. But correct. I think this online opportunities are perfect for people in this group. And they're not necessarily looking for religious things, but, all of the resources that are available. And I think that, so I don't know if that's more because of COVID, but yeah, really, really see it here. Just in terms of denomination, the kind of big story in denomination, I'm sure nothing would be surprising to you here, but the big story in general is this 38% of people who have no denomination. That's a story throughout the country. And I think what's interesting here is that you don't see, like, the numbers are the same in every region. It's not like all the no denomination people went out to live in the area where there are no aren't as many synagogues. It's just like, it's surprising to me how consistent this is across the region. The only real difference is that there's more Orthodox Jews in Union. We talked about synagogue membership. So what we did see is that the rate of synagogue membership is much lower than in any other region. It's 18% of households, and in the 30s and even 40 in other regions, and attending high holiday services. So this was a place where,
that's interesting.
Yeah, so what we typically see, it's funny, it's not quite consistent, is that there are a lot of people who attend high holiday services who are not members of synagogues. And that I think was more so that's something that you may think about here, is giving opportunities for people to participate who are not members. And I think,
does that 18%, that lower synagogue membership, is that related to the higher percentage of folks in the personal category of the index of Jewish
Thank you.
engagement?
Yes, good point. Right, those people in that personal group are generally not synagogue members.
So folks in the western area of Greater Metro West are engaging in a whole lot of types of Jewish activities. They're just not Jewish activities that are synagogue based.
Right. And here's other types of activities that's worth looking at. This is, not surprising, JCC membership low, membership in other organizations, even not, this is, so it's not Synagogue, it's not JCC, also relatively low. But here, and the reason that these are shaded is to show, I mean, it's just to illustrate it, that in the report, we mark where things are there's a statistically significant difference. That means it's not just like the random chance of the survey, it's a real difference in the population. So these are real differences. In these two rows, this is participating in any Jewish program or donating to a Jewish organization. And there you see that even though their numbers are a little bit different, they're actually the same. So people are participating in these forms of Jewish life at the same rate in every region. And I think this is the last slide I have. And we have a lot in the report about differences in connection to the community, I mean, just in general, a lot about connection and about community feelings. And I would really encourage you to look at this community connection report. It's very, very interesting. And this just shows to what extent you feel connected to any local community. And you can see that, connections is lower, both in East Morris and in the West, but it's not tiny. I mean, it's still, there's still a lot of people who feel at least somewhat connected, at least a little bit. Again, this is a pretty pattern that we see consistent with a lot of other communities, although there are differences with Greater Metro West, and there are a lot of differences with the type of community and the structure of the community. But it's very typical in Jewish communities to have like the concentration of Jewish life in some areas, and then these outlying areas that often many communities are not aware of how many Jews live there and how they're engaging in Jewish life, and just creates opportunities for how to connect them with them, find them, and reach out to them without saying, you have to get in a car and drive 45 minutes in traffic to be part of the Jewish community. So I think that was it.
I mean, Alona, if you have particular questions that you're thinking about, we're happy to, talk a little bit.
Mm-hmm. I think the points you hit on are exactly things that we need to consider, and I think really do hit home. I think the idea of people sort of not being a part of a synagogue or trying to encourage someone to come in for the high holidays, I think is important. I think we've been trying to think about ways to encourage, to get our name out and to sort of, as my daughter would say, get the unity and community to, we talk about that. Like, so if you there's a lot of sort of community service type things we think we can do as a synagogue, doing sort of non-religious activities to sort of get your name out there, so that eventually maybe that comes into doing other things together and people joining more, sort of in a non-threatening situation. I think a lot of it's sort of complicated by COVID and trying to be sort of pre-COVID, we were sort of dealing with a lot of sort of security concerns, right? When you're not as well resourced as a sort of very large, let's say, 1,000-member synagogue, and you need like an armed guard or you need better doors, and so you apply for a grant and you get it, but you sort of don't want to over publicize and welcome people in. I think that was some of our challenge. Pre-COVID, we were sort of dealing with how do you publicize and how do you stay safe, and then sort of during COVID, how to stay relevant. And now trying to think about the next sort of chapter. How do we be relevant and get people in and get our name out appropriately so people know we exist? Because everybody in our synagogue, which is different than others, it's a fully volunteer-led synagogue. We have a part-time cantor and everything else that goes on. We don't have an office staff. We don't have an executive director. Everything that we do is us. And so if you met the people in the Hebrew school, we're all sort of moms like me, we're all teaching each other's children, and everyone is there because we want to be, and it's important to us. And so we're doing what we can to make things happen. But it's a big effort when you don't have sort of like the organizational strength behind you, I guess, right? There has to be some. So our goal now is to really try and sort of grow our membership and grow our Hebrew school, and sort of do it with like an organizational acumen and professionalism. So I thought sitting in on these calls might give us some insight, yes, sort of how to target people and how to address people. And I think also trying to think about how to better reach out to people. I think that's something we are lacking. I don't think an advertisement in the local paper is really going to do it, but so that was sort of like our next steps, is how do we go about getting our name out there and doing it safely.
Mm-hmm. I mean, back when we were talking to the synagogue groups at the beginning of this process, Janet, I remember, one of the sort of tensions here in these statistics is that, of course, Alona and her amazing, inspiring group of volunteers who are building Jewish community together, they want to attract more people to come into the synagogue and join them and have that community. And in some ways, this data sort of is counter to that whole, to that whole set of goals. Because correct, what it challenges us to think about is that there are these people engaging in Jewish life without coming into synagogues, and what does that mean for us, as Jewish institutions, right? I mean, Federation, where I work now with Marion and Julie, we're kind of like the mega institution, right? Like we represent all institutional life, and here we're seeing these large swaths, like half of the Jews in our area, who that's just not how they are actively Jewish, but that's just not the way. And so, it's a challenging set of questions. I don't think there are simple answers.
Right.
Right. But I would look through a couple of thoughts. First of all, I love the way you described the synagogue as lay led. I think that's a real strength. I think for people, because it may not be a strength for you. I can imagine you might like a little more professional assistance, but I think for people who are not interested, or haven't been interested in synagogues, one of the reasons that they may not be interested is because they have this image of what a synagogue is. And it sounds like yours might be a very different model that could be appealing. So I would, push the lay led and the
DIY.
Yeah, exactly.
DIY Jewish life.
Exactly.
Well, that's what it is.
Yeah, so I think that's really wonderful. It's less intimidating. It's it's more welcoming. The other thing I would think about is and I said this, I'm sure I've said this on these meetings, I feel like I say it all the time, is that I think it has to be, I think a lot of people just don't like to join. They don't like to commit. And so I think getting people to come to a program, an activity, and whether it's, and I think, maybe you do some outdoor activities in different areas that are not in the synagogue, and, have a picnic, stuff like that. And
right, half of the adult Jews in Greater Metro West participated in some sort of program in the prior year during the survey, right?
Yeah.
So they're not joining synagogues, but they are coming to programs.
Right.
Well, I think last year, so simple, the Hanukkah cooking demonstration, we had tremendous, I would say, for us. I'm sure it wasn't, but that was really so well received, I thought, from our synagogue, which we put a picture in of the synagogue. It was on the slide when it started. Nice. I saw it when the names that popped up, who attended were more than I would have thought. I think people really felt like they were part of something, but in their own home and doing something a little different. So I thought that was great.
Another idea, I don't know if this would work, but I assume that people, where your members are, they're pretty spread out.
Right.
Yeah. So I think like the idea of connecting people who live closer to each other in,
Okay.
some kind of pods or a chavarot or something, and to do like, an area, in a town or in a couple of towns, and have a program for people who live in these, 5 towns or 3 towns, and they ask them to invite a friend, and it doesn't matter if the friend is Jewish or not, like just
Right,
make,
right.
just make it a community event. Like it could be like as a picnic, or in the summer it could be a Havdalah, or something like that.
Okay.
That's
good. Yeah, and we've done we just did a coat drive, right? So you have people who are donating coats that maybe we haven't heard from 5 years, but so that I thought that's also, that happened the second year in a row we've done that. And the person who's doing the collecting is going, there were a lot of people that you don't hear from very often, or haven't in a while, but they're still on the email list, and they wanted to give, they thought that was a good, so it's good to like sort of recapture those people.
Yeah, and the fact that they're still reading your emails is
that's amazing.
Yeah.
So
right, and also that they wanted to engage in a Jewish activity of an act of chesed, an act of caring for other people, right? That's like a kind of like a personal way of expressing your Judaism.
Correct.
I just want to share, while we're talking, I want to share one page. This is from the community report. And this just shows like what are the barriers to participation in Jewish life. This is the people who say that this is like somewhat or very much a barrier to Jewish life. And I think one of the things you can look at here is that the differences by these engagement groups. So I think somebody put in the chat, like, why don't people do things? And you can see that for the different engagement groups, they have different responses to this, to these questions, but there's a lot of similarity. One thing that I did happen to notice is, this is obviously a hot topic, is we offered, is it something about your political views? And this was a little bit higher in the minimal group and the personal group. I don't quite know what to make of it, but that's, and that could be, your views on the left or on the right, but if you feel like you're out of step with the community. But in terms of the regional differences, so this is something I would spend some time digging into. Again, the shaded areas are one where there are like significant differences in the regions. Don't know people. A third of the Jewish adults say that don't know people is one of the reasons. A third say there are no interesting activities. So, it makes sense. But the not knowing people, and that's the hard thing, is how do you connect them if you don't get them to a program? But I think that was my thinking about the connecting small groups.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Bring a friend.
Yeah, bring a friend and get invited by a friend, not with an email, but have somebody invite a friend personally.
Right, come do this with me.
I think that's great. Great. Okay.
So,
well, I hope this was helpful.
Tremendously.
We got to have a personal consultation with Janet, which was cool.
This was amazing.
Yeah, you got the best presentation.
I really appreciate it. I sat through, the first talk I thought was just so interesting, just academically listening to it and thinking how you collected the data, and how, you were talking about drawing, making sure it sounded, sanity checking it versus other things that you had. I mean, the statistical analysis I thought was fascinating before we got even gone into the religion. So
Wow, not too many people say that. I'm so
Got it. Success.
good.
Success. Well, it was lovely to meet you. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming. Good luck with all you're doing.
Yes.
And thanks for all you're doing to lead your Jewish community.
Good luck
And
to
Thank
you.
you.
Well,
Thank
good
you
luck.
for all of, thank you. I think this is great. So,
You're welcome.
Okay.
Okay.
Our pleasure from Federation to be in partnership with you. And, I'm going to think about who are the right folks on our team to be back in touch with you, Alona, because we have a lot of ways that we reach out with our synagogue.
thank you.
Our security initiative, our synagogue initiative, we have an office that deals with all the religious schools. So I took some notes. We'll be circling back.
Okay. I appreciate it. Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome. You have a good night.
Good night.
Okay.
Thank you
Take
so
care.
much,
Bye-bye.
Janet.